This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the MSI GE66 Raider, not to be confused with the GS66 Stealth. This one is not quite as thin, not quite as light, though relatively speaking, it is quite thin and light. But the Raider is always my sweet spot in the MSI line for something that is pretty portable, but is not so crazy thin that you have to go to Max-Q graphics and pay more money and all that sort of thing. And this is the redesign for 2020. We're going to look at it now. And now a shout out to our sponsor, Cleaner One Pro for the Mac from Trend Micro. They're the same folks that make antivirus software, home network security stuff, all that. You can trust them. Anyway, they believe that cleaning your Mac, the files and all that sort of stuff should be easy, one click, which is what you'd expect from a Mac. What you don't expect from a Mac is that same problem we have with Windows computers. You get all sorts of legacy files and junk left behind and all that sort of thing. I mean, I'm like a pro user, you know, and I looked at my MacBook Pro and it's like you can see the little parts of applications that I've tried and utilities and decided not to keep get left behind. So it can clean up those things. It can also do some other nifty things like look for duplicate files for you. Also, it can do the usual thing, just look for really big files. So you know you've got like some humongous videos sitting somewhere that you haven't cleaned up that you want to clean up and save some space. And it all runs from the toolbar. It's really pretty easy to use, just a click and a drop down. And there's also compaction of memory. If your Mac's using more memory than you think it should after having run a bunch of programs, it can do that too. So be sure to check out the link in the description. And yes, there is a Windows version too for you Windows folks. And now back to our video. So for those who follow the Raider line, obviously this is a significant redesign in terms of looks and port location and all that sort of thing, and the way the internals are laid out too, which we'll see later on in this video for the teardown. It's a good look. I mean, I leave it up to you as to how you feel about it. MSI's looks have not been so super inspired, so the black brushed aluminum that became the kind of matte black thing has now transitioned to aluminum. It is an aluminum lid with a kind of design that's reminiscent of what we see Alienware did a little while ago, HP Omens, even some of the Tritons. So it's a trendy look that's pretty in right now. It looks like a gaming laptop, but it's not like over the top with graphics on it and bright colors and all that sort of thing. And their dragon logo is pretty toned down now. It's monochromatic. One thing I will notice though is the light bar in the front. Wow, that looks like Tokyo at night. It's pretty cool. And yes, it's programmable, so you can have whatever colors you want on there, or you can turn it off when you go to work so people don't giggle at your light show. You get the idea. It's got a per key RGB SteelSeries backlit keyboard. This is something you'd expect from MSI, and they're a reasonably premium line. This is not the most expensive thing they make. It's upper mid-range in their tier, but in terms of performance, man, this thing rocks, which is why I like the Raider line personally. So you've got your choice of an Intel Core i7, Intel 10th Gen with 6 cores, or you can get with a Core i9 HK, the overclockable one with 8 cores. You've got, and one nice thing with the Raider is they usually don't do Max-Q graphics because they don't have to, but in one instance they will be doing it. But you can get it with an RTX 2070 full, 2070 mobile, of course, and that one starts at $1799 with a Core i7, not bad, and a 240 Hertz IPS fast response display. If you want to go up to the RTX 2070 Super, it's not Max-Q, nice that, I think I'd lean towards that one, then that's $2199, again with the 240 Hertz panel. And you can go to town, I mean they sent us the top of the line model, 300 Hertz refresh display, Intel Core i9 inside, and the RTX 2080 Super Max-Q. In this case, this one had to get Max-Q to fit in the thermal and power envelope here, and that one's pushing $3,000. With the lower end models, you're going to get a 512 gig NVMe M.2 SSD and 16 gigs of RAM, or you move up a little bit, you get 32 gigs of RAM. RAM's not too expensive right now, so yay that, dual channel. And you'll get a 1 terabyte SSD. Of course, these things are easily upgraded yourself. Another thing that I like about the MSI is that take off the bottom cover, which I'll show you, and you can get to all this stuff and do it yourself. They've redesigned the motherboard completely compared to the last generation on this. Lots of heat pipes going on. They're pretty proud about this. And it does certainly help with cooling. We have the most performant model, so also the hottest running model. And I was pretty impressed with the temperatures here. And even when gaming, we could hit the thermal maximum and occasionally throttle on a core, but the average temperatures were in the 70s to the 80s when playing things like Shadow of the Tomb Raider on Ultra and Far Cry New Dawn on Ultra. So that's pretty demanding stuff at 1080p resolution, granted. It's almost a shame that they don't have at least a 2K panel, if not a 4K, because you have so much power in this really high-end model that you could certainly easily game at 2K resolution and get at least 60 frames per second, if not more. And yes, there is still a 17-inch model available, same basic specs, only in a bigger chassis with a bigger screen going on there and stuff. It has not gotten the redesign yet, and MSI told me that unfortunately COVID has also gotten in the way of getting that redesign done, so we probably won't see it until they do a major refresh for the next generation of Intel CPUs or NVIDIA GPUs. At this point, it's a little too late in this year, a little too confusing if they switch on the fly. So you'll get the older looks, which you can see, that's my personal Raider 17-inch there, and that's what that one's going to look like. Connectivity is good on the machine, especially for a 15-inch, even if it is a gaming laptop. You've got 3 USB-A ports, and those are 3.2 Gen 2. You have 2 USB-C, one of them only supporting DisplayPort. It is labeled as such, so you can figure out which one that it is. A little bummed there's no Thunderbolt 3 here in this price range. I mean, you might say it's not totally necessary. You probably don't need an eGPU, for example, and you already have such high-end graphics cards inside, but there it is. We have killer Ethernet on board. We've got a single audio jack. It's combo audio. It does support SPDIF, and MSI says they're still using the usual high-quality DAC inside for better than average headphone audio or speaker if you happen to be using speakers. The stereo speakers that are built in, the usual Nahimic 3 audio, they have like no bass. Honestly, I was a little surprised for a gaming laptop that we couldn't get a little more oomph going on here. Perhaps the 17-inch has better audio. I know my older generation one does have better audio than this 15-inch does. Oh well. So this time around we have ports on the back, we have ports on the side, which is new for them, for the Raider line. The power connector is a rectangular one, sort of what Lenovo, like what Lenovo does for their ThinkPad laptops. And the power adapter that you get will either be a 230 watt or a 280 watt, and it depends on the configuration of the machine, how powerful the CPU and GPU you get. Yeah, you get the idea there. Hi, I'm glad that we have both HDMI 2.0 and mini DisplayPort in case you don't want to use the USB-C display out or you want to connect multiple monitors at 4K 60 Hertz resolution, so good. When it comes to graphics, you have your choice of using either dedicated graphics all the time or having NVIDIA Optimus enabled. When I game, I always go to DGPU only because you typically get a couple more frames per second. So all the footage that you see was done setting it on dedicated GPU only mode. So what about the heat and the noise on this? We got a good cooling solution in terms of the arrangement of the heat pipes, nice large heat sink, lots of ventilation. We got it out the back, we got it out the sides, we have large air intakes at the bottom, but we do have a Core i9 here and an RTX 2080 Max-Q supercard. So you will hear the fans, and it's the fans are tuned so that it's not like a roar and the whole room is going, but it sounds more like water boiling when it's working hard. So I leave it up to you if you are okay with that sort of sound, but it's like shh. Now I did my gaming tests in the extreme performance mode. You have a bunch of different performance modes. If you set it to the more like a balanced mode, you probably won't hear as much. So definitely audible. It's a gaming laptop, nothing out of the ordinary. Surface temperatures are surprisingly not that hot, especially it's summer here in Dallas, Texas now. The only area that does get hot is where most laptops get hot these days, which is above the keyboard, just close to where the display meets, and that's not a place you often touch. But the bottom side, warm, not hot. The keyboard area, absolutely just fine. So the cooling is effective. Given the anemic speakers, you're going to want to use headphones probably just to drown out the sound of the boiling water though. So the keyboard and the trackpad. The good news is Microsoft Precision Trackpad, no complaints, works fine. The keyboard is, again, nicely backlit, SteelSeries per key, RGB. You can program that just like the front LED strip to do anything that you want or use the preset effects. The key travel on this is less than last generation. It has a nice feel to it. It's got a fairly crisp key return and all that sort of thing, but I would like more key travel, honestly. So for those of you who are using this for productivity and actually have to type much, it's not the worst or something like that, but I just kind of miss the last gen keyboard. So for displays, like I said, your choice of a 240 Hertz or 300 Hertz refresh IPS display. Both of these are like, really, they're overkill. Even if you're doing something, say, like Apex Legends, where you want high frame rates and you can probably get them, it's beyond what you need, most likely. But hey, it's there for you. We do have the 300 Hertz panel. It has pretty good brightness. It has pretty much, the usual full sRGB coverage and 75% of Adobe RGB. It's a decent enough panel. MSI has color profiles. When we test it, we put it on the sRGB profile, which tends to be the most color accurate. Contrast is pretty good. It's a little bit above average. It's also a fast response display, so they say 3 or 5 milliseconds, so you're not going to see ghosting going on. It's a perfectly fine panel. It's nice, and again, it's crazy high refresh rate. So this is all sounding pretty good. What's the catch here? It must be battery life, right? It must just stink. Well, actually, they put a 99.9 watt-hour battery, so that's the biggest battery you can put on and still fly on an airplane. That's they're not skimping on that either. That's a pretty nice touch there. And if you have it in NVIDIA Optimus mode, switchable graphics, and you're doing productivity with the display set to 150 nits or streaming some video, that sort of thing, battery life is actually pretty good on this thing. I mean, 6 to 7 hours, which is pretty good for a super powerful gaming laptop. And that's without doing anything more aggressive than just setting it to the balanced power profile. If you tried harder, well, you probably could. Wi-Fi on this is fine. It's a killer Wi-Fi card is the AX1650, which is really an Intel Wi-Fi 6 card, so no complaints with that one. To take off the bottom cover, it's the usual story. Happily Phillips head screws. You don't even need a Torx driver. One underneath the factory seal sticker, which MSI always says is so you know nobody tampered with your machine before you get it. You are allowed to go inside. It's a little easier if you happen to have a suction cup to pull it up. And the seam runs along right near the bottom edge, not near the top, except it does wrap around the back. And it stays up above the nice LED light bar there, so you don't have to fiddle with that. Back edge is the only one that wraps around. The side is like so. Lots of pipes here, which MSI is rightfully proud of, and not too many of them are shared, which is a good thing, so you don't get too much cross pollution, but you know. So we have that. Good size heat sinks on board. Tripod style here. Would like to see 4 screws, 1 in each corner, but the thermals on this are actually pretty good, especially given that we have that most high performance model, which will make the most heat. We have 2 RAM slots underneath our little Mylar and heat shield covers right here. So 64 gigs would be the max. Like I said, they sell it with either 16 or 32, but if you want to upgrade it, you can do that. 2 M.2 SSD slots, the boot drive NVMe only. The second one supports both NVMe and SATA if you want to put a less expensive drive in the second one. And we have both Mylar tape and heat shielding tape on our Samsung SSD. A nice fast SSD of that. And here's our killer Wi-Fi card, Wi-Fi 6, which again is a basically rebranded Intel card. It is a good Wi-Fi card right there. That's socketed. You could upgrade that too. And our big battery right here, 99.9 watt hours. That's the biggest they can make and still be allowed to fly it on an airplane. Should we ever get to, well, fly on airplanes much again. And the speaker drivers are right over here, and there's side vents for the audio on this. So overall, it's sounding pretty good, and I have to say it is. It's not the most beautiful razor blade looking laptop in the world, but you know, for around $1,800 to $2,100, you can get yourself an incredibly powerful and fairly portable laptop with a good thermal design and good cooling that's going to be at the top of its class for performance. You think that you used to have to get a really big desktop replacement to see these kind of frame rates and games and all that sort of thing, and now, something that fits in your backpack, really, it does. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.